Hello and welcome to another episode of Movies That Make Us. I'm Jake.
I'm Tracy.
And I'm Val.
And this is it. Last episode of February. 00 February comes to an end with a bang here, I guess.
No, that was a pretty big bang.
Yeah, it was one of the biggest bangs.
It's
in a
not the
Bond
big
movie.
bang.
No.
No, but it was. Anyway.
How
we'll
has
get
this
into all of
been
that.
for you, Jake? Like this whole diving into James
The world
Bond
of espionage.
and
Yeah.
diving in at this end of
Yeah.
the Bond movies. Like I feel like
So I think in a lot of ways this is a good place to go if you haven't ever watched Bond movies, because these five kind of tie in with each other. And from my understanding, other Bond movies don't necessarily do that. So you do get kind of a beginning of James Bond to an ending, right? And I think that was good in a lot of ways. Some of the movies I enjoyed more than others, and we'll get into this one. But I think at the end of the day, my wife and I were talking about it, and she said, "So what do you think? Are you a Bond fan?" And I said, they're fine. And I think that's where I'm at with it. Like I get the appeal, and I get why people love the Bond movies, and I think they're well done and everything. But I think at the end of the day, they're fine is where I'm at. So I don't know that I would consider myself a Bond fan after this, but I've experienced it and it's cool. They're good movies. So
if you jump into some of the old ones where it gets really cheesy, those are different Bonds, but they're so much fun.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely prefer Bond over Austin Powers.
Yeah. But Dr. Evil's still great.
Yeah, Dr. Evil's fantastic. It's just
Austin himself is not.
I think,
great.
You make enough of those movies and you just run out of jokes, and they did. So
yeah.
They didn't run out of jokes in Cocaine Bear. That was funny. Tracy and I and Babe, my husband Dave, are going to do a special episode on what to see with Val on Cocaine Bear. We're letting everybody kind of go see it, and then we're going to do a little special ep. So, yeah.
I saw a TikTok, and I think I sent it to you both, where there's a guy who's like, "So what do you need to know before you see Cocaine Bear?"
Nothing.
He's like,
yeah.
You don't have to
I mean, you should know that it's rated R.
Oh yeah. I would hope restrained though. Like it could have been way more.
It was tasteful, amazingly enough.
Violent, yes.
Elizabeth Banks did a good job. And I think Jeff Whipple, who is the regional director of the Megaplex, explained this to me. I was on a chat with him the other day, and he said, Elizabeth Banks did Cocaine Bear kind of like you get a Marvel movie where you get something really violent and then you get something really funny. So it kind of takes down that violence a little bit and you remember more of the funny. And so then it just it's this enjoyable experience. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Before we get any more into Cocaine Bear, I do want to take an opportunity real quick to invite you to join our Patreon and become a patron or Patreon supporter, whatever they're called.
A patron of Patreon?
Yeah, the patron of Patreon. But we have 3 different levels. We have Movie Club, which is $3 a month. That gets you access to exclusive episodes that are only available through our Patreon. We have the producer level that will get you that same access. Plus, we'll add your name to the end credits of our show. That's $6 a month. And you'll also be able to join us if we do a live stream for one of our exclusive episodes. You'll be able to join us for that live stream. And then we have executive producer level, which gets you all of the stuff that the producer level gets you. Plus, we will let you pick the movie for a future episode. That's $12 a month. So please consider joining our Patreon. We appreciate the support. It would be awesome. So,
and being able to pick what we're going to watch would be a very, very fun experience.
I think also if if they're an executive producer, maybe they get to sit with us at one of the pre-screenings. We'll pull some names out of a hat.
I like that.
I'll just throw that out there because I have to tell you, I sat between Jake and Tracy at a movie screening before, and it's been super fun.
Yeah.
Unless you're 12 years old
movie.
Shazam.
Yeah.
12 years old watching Shazam, you're gonna hate the experience with me.
Listen, some 12-year-olds just have a very refined palate when it comes to comedy. More refined than Tracy's, apparently.
I gotta say though,
that wasn't funny.
Jake sitting between Val and Babe was such a great experience.
Hold on, time out.
I sat and I had a Dave and Tracy. I was like sandwiched in between them.
Between. Sorry, sitting next to them.
I was gonna say, why was Tracy sitting between Val and Dave?
I mean, why not?
That's weird.
But yeah, when we were at Cocaine Bear, and they laughed the entire time, which made my experience of the movie even more fun because and we talk about this a lot, is that who you go see a movie with can really can really help you or hinder what you think about a movie. I mean, I've been to movies with people before that it wasn't a great experience with that person, but then I watched it with other people years later and I enjoyed the movie more. Or you go and watch a movie with these two and we're laughing our butts off, and then I go watch it with like a librarian later, and then maybe Cocaine Bear is not. I'm not saying librarians aren't fun, but there's that one that's like just like that wouldn't happen. That's not true. Scientifically,
it's the shusher librarian.
Shush.
Yeah, stop. But I gotta say, Dave and I, like, there are scenes where you know what's coming,
librarians.
Right? Like you know what's going to happen, but there's kind of like this build up to it. And Val is closing her eyes, but then she's like peeking, and Dave is just busted up laughing, and then other people in the audience are just oh my gosh, it was such a fun experience.
I think we were the loudest three people though.
Definitely. Yeah. Mark Woodring was not having as much fun as we were. He's still enjoying it.
That's just Mark. But he's not an overly excitable person. We love him, but he's just kind of in there. He's
I'm like, this is like snakes on a plane. Like, it tells you right up front what this is. It makes no excuses for it. And he's like, is that a good thing? I'm like, yeah,
because you're not questioning it. And the thing is that the expectation of the movie, because I didn't really have any.
Yeah.
It was so much fun. If you just go in, it was a lot smarter than I thought it was going to be. Yeah. It was a lot funnier than I thought it was going to be. I don't know that we need Cocaine Shark now. I don't think that's necessary. Take your win and walk away.
I think if it's the right script, if they can get the right script for it.
They teased Cocaine Sheep.
Yeah, they did.
So
Cocaine Rams, sheep, Rams. I don't know.
But
this movie is taking the country by storm, though. Like, people have really latched on. We
just need to laugh.
Yes.
And I get that. And I think that that's totally true. I think you need a movie like this. And I'm with you guys. It's totally fine that the title tells you everything you need to know before you go into this movie. I read the title and I said, I don't think that's a Jake movie, but I know what a lot of people are really going to enjoy it. And that's fantastic.
And that's what I said on Good Things Utah. I'm like, it's not for everyone. But if you think at all, you might laugh at one thing, go see it. Like, it's not it's not the kind of movie Dave and I will usually try and pick bad movies that we know are going to be so bad they're good. Right. And this one was actually just good. Yeah. But there are some types of movies like the Sharknadoes I'm not really into.
It's Sharknado with a budget. And
I mean, a way better budget.
Sharknado is definitely one of those movies. For me, Sharknado, I will never, ever sit down by myself and just watch Sharknado. But going to see Sharknado with Tracy and a bunch of people that came, including Dave was there, and his commentary throughout was one of my favorite movie-going experiences.
Again, the people that you go with can make the experience. That's why Force Awakens with 250 people that I invited was like the best experience I've ever had at a Star Wars movie.
Yeah. I can see that.
Now going from really funny death to just really not funny death, we're going to jump into No Time to Die because it was a lot of death and none of it was funny. None of it was funny. This was a hard movie.
This is the opposite of Cocaine Bear. Cocaine Bear told you exactly what the movie is about. This is the opposite of what the movie's
a good
about
point.
because he did have time to die.
That is a
Because-
very good point.
Spoilers.
He dies.
He dies. Yeah.
I didn't think they were going to do it.
I'm really glad they did because he said he was done. They gave him a hero's ending. The ending of this movie is probably my favorite Bond ending in any movie.
Yep.
I know you could kind of see a lot of this movie coming, but that's because they set it up so well. And what they did in this movie, they basically took what we didn't love in Spectre and they gave all those moments a reason, a purpose.
Yeah.
And it was visually back to what I loved about No Time to Die. It took something from every era of a Bond movie, everything that you love from every era, and it put it in there.
Yeah.
The car, you went back to his old car from the beginning, and all the switches come up like all of the other Bond, and he did the switches, and then that spin where the car is spinning, and then up come the guns, and I'm just like, this is 1960s Bond. You know, it's not the sexism, but it is the killing, you know, the style and the action. You know, and then you get the heart that you don't get with those other movies that you get with the new Bond movies. This was full of, he had to choose between himself and the world. And we keep bringing that up in all of these, like, you know, and he chose his family. And so, yeah.
Well, and when I saw Dark Knight Rises, I was like, are they going to do this? Are they actually going to do this? And then they copped out. And I was like, yeah, you know, and so many movies do
that's funny you said they copped out because
I didn't even think of that. But I felt that with Ant-Man as well. I'm like, you had the chance to really do something dramatic and shocking and different, and instead you went safe. And this one didn't, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah. I was surprised as well because they typically, like you said, Tracy, that is what they do with these big franchises is, hey, we're going to tease this. Yeah. But is anybody ever really dead? Well, sometimes it's okay to let them really be dead. And if he's not really dead, they're going to have to do some really good explaining on how he made it through because he didn't.
And I love that we had a female 007. That was
my biggest thing because everybody's throwing this little fit about we don't need a female James Bond. I don't want a Jane Bond either. But 007 can be anyone. James Bond is James Bond, but 007 can be anyone. And I love that in this movie he is out of sorts. He's a little wobbly in his execution in a lot of his places, and he's getting outsmarted by these new 00s. And the new 007, I love her. She's a fantastic actress in this movie. She is also in the Wakanda Forever movie. She's a phenomenal actress. She's in Woman King. She has been making some super smart choices in her career, and I love her in this because she fits that like dry comedic like sarcasm, but not snarky, because a lot of times when you see women of power in movies, they make them snarky instead of just smart and, you know, just kind of this dry sarcasm. And I liked that because she's likable, just like James Bond, and she's smart, but she also like understood the situation that was going on, and everyone understands what James Bond brought to that program. And so I liked, like, they really treated him the way they should. They gave him a good ending. Yeah. They gave him the respect. They gave him the hero's ending, and they passed the torch in a good way.
And it was nice too that he wasn't like dismissive of her because she was a woman. He was just upset because he's 007. Yeah. Like, he doesn't care that she's a 00. It was just, that's my number. You know,
but I do like how he tries to shake it off. Like, it's just a number. He says that it's just a number, but you could tell
inside. It's when we've all left a job that we've loved, and then we've gone back to visit, and then the person that's now in our position, and we're like, "Oh, I'm so happy for you," and you are, but also inside you're dying a little bit. You can
I'm
be
so
happy
glad
for
everything's
some.
going so well for you. That things look way better than they did when I was there. That's fantastic.
Things are running so good now. It's amazing. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ever since I got out of the way, you guys really figured this out. Um,
Oh, go ahead.
I liked her character a lot too, and I I don't know because they haven't announced anything as far as what they're going to do next with the franchise, and I don't know if it will be continuing on with her, but I'd love to see her if that's not the case. I'd love to see some kind of spin-off or something where we get to see her in a standalone type
I
role.
read a
Yeah.
piece just recently that said that they have not made any decisions. They've not made any casting. They don't even have a script yet. They're going to take their time.
And
And
honestly,
figure
I'd
out
like it if they went back to the one shots.
I'm fine with
The
that.
cool thing about James Bond is if you've read, I mean, they're books, right?
Right. Yeah.
And they're basically like if you have a favorite mystery novel or favorite, and it has the same character, but every story is a different,
Right.
place where that person is. I'm okay with that. Like I liked this little jaunt, but I think there are so many stories out there, and there are so many people that could be in those stories that I'd be okay if they just ended this one right here. They ended it. I'm very satisfied with the ending of this section of it because she's already in. She has other things coming up.
Yeah.
And I kind of would just like to see something totally different now.
I
Like
think
we've
it'll be a
gone
fresh
down this road, and I'd like to see something different. I mean, I'm not going to be angry at it either way, but if I had to choose, if Hollywood cared and they were like, "Hey Val, what do you want?" I'd be like, "Why don't you try something new, Hollywood?
Right.
Wouldn't that be cool?"
Cocaine Bear's a perfect example. All comes right back to Cocaine Bear. But
All comes right back to Cocaine Bear.
I do want to say though, I kind of threw something out this last week because this next month we start talking about Creed. And when you have a franchise as long as Bond and as long as Creed, there aren't very many franchises other than those two that have this many movies that have been going on for this long that have been this successful, right?
Yeah.
And for me, as much as I like Bond, Creed is the top for me at the truest movie franchise of all time, because when you get into Bond, it totally switched the way the movies were, the characters were, and the storytelling was by the time we get to the movies we've been talking about since the beginning one. And for me, Creed, when we end up with this final Creed movie, and we'll talk about this next month, for me, every single one of the Rocky / Creed movies has stayed true to the original reason that Rocky was made, from the first movie to this last movie. Some changes, but like the same idea, the same feel, the same story,
it's a story through storyline. Yeah.
Yeah. But also it's that same feel. If you like Rocky and you've never seen Creed before, but you went into Creed, you would feel that same thing that you liked about it. Yeah. Is there different music? Yeah. Is there different faces? Yeah. But that same feeling, it's the same formula. And when you get into Bond, you have the same basic formula. And then because of the formula of the original Bond movies, because women were a huge part of the formula. If you were a Bond girl, then that was supposed to catapult you as a female actress, but just from your face. We didn't care what you said. It was your face, your body. And that's how it started, because that's the time we were in. And and the storytelling was different. And so obviously that has had to change tremendously between then and now. But I do think that you get the chase scene.
Yeah.
You still get a Bond girl. Bond girl has changed a little bit, but we get her. And I look forward to the Bond girl. And our Bond girls in this last movie were great. We had a couple different Bond girls that came in and did different things, and they were all smart and they could all hold their own, and they were all kicking butt and beautiful, like in their own different ways. And I really loved to see that arc of the Bond girl from the beginning to the end.
Yeah. And it's interesting because this take on Bond, this whole series has been so grounded. You know,
Mhm.
they don't have a lot of the high-tech toys. I mean, he has the watch with the EMP, but it's stuff that still feels like it's believable and could exist in our world.
Very physical.
You go back to the
Yeah.
60s and some of the 70s and 80s, and it's like these gadgets are like so over the top, but like a giant satellite is beaming down a laser beam into a
On a shark.
chasing laser beams on sharks, freaking sharks. But there's like the Pierce Brosnan one where he's driving across the Arctic and they have like a laser from space chasing the car, and it's
Mhm.
like, but
Like
I'm
in the
okay with
popcorn
that.
house.
But
Real
this
genius.
is a very different version of Bond. And
Yeah.
so I'm
Yeah.
interested to see where they go next. Do we go back to the silly gimmicky? Do we go over the top? Do we stay grounded? I'm just very curious as to where they go.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see. And maybe we just have a higher threshold for what we think technology is out there, like, because they do a lot with like nanobots in this one, and
Yeah.
I don't know if they're really like the smart blood is an example of that, but also the whole virus
Coded to your
Heracles that they're
DNA.
trying to contain is all nanobots because it targets a specific DNA and things like that. And the fact that we kind of just sit back and think, oh yeah, there's a lab somewhere in China or somewhere in Russia that's developing that.
Yeah,
Like,
I believe it.
yeah, exactly.
And I do think there's somebody also
There's
walking
probably a
around
lab
with
in
an
the US
eyeball
that's doing it.
somewhere.
A
Like,
bionic
Yeah.
eyeball.
yeah, like they're, yeah, I mean,
you know, Rocket Raccoon wants that eyeball.
Yeah, he does. If he saw that eyeball, that guy has.
I do think it is telling because of the past of James Bond and the idea of how women are such a big part of the movies,
Mhm.
and the fact that he ends up having a daughter,
Yeah.
as his, you know, blood sake,
Mhm.
was really cool. And I really love the ending of them driving away in his car. You know,
And
like,
he's telling the story of James
yeah,
Bond. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's just it's just such a good ending. Like
yeah.
there are some
it
movies where you're like, they did so good, but they didn't stick the landing. And
Yeah.
this one,
No, I was so
is well said.
satisfied.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because a lot of the comments that we've seen, like on our Facebook page about James Bond, when we announced we were doing 00 February, we had a post that some folks were commenting on, and that Daniel Craig is the worst of the James Bonds. And I know there's going to be an never ending argument about who the
Right.
best James Bond is and who the worst is. And you're going to find people that will say any of them are the best, any of them are the worst. And I get that. But a lot of people even commented that they didn't like the way that this ended. And I think, to me, I agree. I think it was a satisfying ending. I think the only reason why it may not feel satisfying is because you want James Bond to live forever. So the idea of him ever dying in a story, you may not like that idea just because you want
Yeah.
that to continue on and to go on.
Yeah.
And I get that, but I
And it
also feel
can,
like,
just not with this James Bond.
Yeah.
and I agree, and it can, but I also think if you take those stakes completely off the table, then it doesn't feel like the stakes aren't high enough, right?
Yeah.
If you know James Bond is never going to die, then
Right.
it doesn't matter how much you ramp up a villain or how much you ramp up a storyline, you're
Yeah.
always going to know he's going to be back in another movie.
Yeah.
Mhm.
For me, it was giving Daniel Craig his
Mhm.
hero's goodbye. For
Yep.
me, it was not an ending to James Bond. It was an ending to Daniel Craig as James Bond.
Absolutely.
Because this is Hollywood. They're not going to not make another James Bond movie.
Oh,
that
for
would be
sure.
the stupidest thing in the world
Right.
if they didn't make another one. So like,
They
I
will.
get that. It's just the same as, you know, our Batman, you know, argument. Like, who is our Batman? Who's your favorite Joker? Who's your favorite Superman?
Spider-Man.
Who's your favorite Spider-Man? Like, all these things. The cool thing is that there's gonna always be the ones that you remember and that you love, and then there's gonna be more. There's something out there for all of us. And for me, I don't necessarily dislike any of the people who have played James Bond. I think they've all played it in such a unique way.
Ways. Yeah.
But as far as what hits for me, is that I do like the darkness of the Daniel Craig James Bond and the realness of him more than I like the cheesiness of the other ones, because that's not the world I grew up in. But my dad, I mean, if you tell my dad that Roger Moore is on or Sean Connery is on, he will watch those, and he loves all of them. Like he watches these as well every time. I mean, we went to the marathon when they had it at the Megaplex, and we watched, you know, all the Daniel Craig ones in the theater, and then No Time to Die. But he likes all the originals as well. And I think it's the same thing is like, which one fits with you? And for me, Daniel Craig fits a little bit more than the others because I like things a little bit more dirty and messy and dark. That's just how it is, you know? But the other ones are fun, and if we didn't have those, we wouldn't have these, you know?
Right.
So like, I get how that's what's so great about movies. And Jake, you said this in a post a couple of days ago, because it's our 4-year anniversary, is that movies get you through things. Movies, we latch movies onto a memory, onto a feeling. And I can tell you the first war movies that I watched in my grandpa's basement in Denver, Colorado. I can tell you what the couches looked like. I can tell you, because I would sit and watch, you know, World War II movies with my grandpa. What's my favorite genre of movie? War movies and action movies. Why? Probably because of that. That's, you know, and I love Bond movies because my dad, and I love jazz music because my dad, and I love, you know, I can't tell you why I love Rocky. I just do. I mean, I can, but we'll talk about that another. But that's so.
Be able to talk about that.
But that's why we connect to all of these things, and that's why not everybody needs to like everything. And I, you know, I get why people don't love Daniel Craig as James Bond, because he isn't shiny,
right?
And he isn't debonair. I don't necessarily think in the way that
he is, but in a different way.
He's new school debonair. He's not old school debonair. And he talks about, like, he doesn't want to talk about his feelings, but we talk and see his feelings throughout every movie, where in the other ones, it wasn't about feelings at all, unless passion, you know, that's it. It was about fighting, passion, getting the bad guy, which is totally cool as well, because you don't have to think about anything else. But
well, I know.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead, Tracy.
I was just going to say, I grew up with my mom loved Sean Connery. So I grew up on a lot of the Connery films. And then when I was going into, you know, being a teenager, it was the Roger Moore era. And so those held a special place in my heart. And it's funny because you go back and you watch some of those, and some of the dialogue is so stinking suggestive. It's like, this stuff flew over my head as a kid. Now I'm watching, I'm like, wow, that was really sexist, or really, really awful. And, you know, but that's just how it was. And it's hard at times, because you want to view movies through your current lenses, but you also have to remember that this is a product of its time.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So as long as
the Pierce Brosnan was when I was in high school, but he was also in the Thomas Crown Affair around that same time. And I love the Thomas Crown Affair.
That was a great movie.
But he was the it man at the time. You know what I mean? And so I think also, like, putting this movie, when we first got Daniel Craig, he wasn't an it man from anywhere.
No, he came
he wasn't. Usually they picked whoever, like, was the leading man of the time, and they British, and then they put him in that role, and it just is a different time in Hollywood now, you know. So
I know in the first, when we talked about the first movie, Tracy, you commented that Daniel Craig's James Bond is kind of a hammer, right? He just kind of gets going. And what's interesting is, now having watched all 5 of his movies, he gets more refined, but he's still a hammer. I mean, in this one, that is it. It's like, I'm just going to get the job done. And it might be the messiest way to get the job done, but I'm going to get it done. And I think typically when we think of spies and espionage, they're much more of a scalpel instead of a hammer, but not this James
He's
Bond.
very much the Tony Stark of of Double O's.
like when he has to open those doors the first time, and Q's
Yeah.
like, okay, this is going to be a really complicated process, and you've got to follow everything in sequence. And what does he do? Like a hammer, like the James Bond, he just switches all the switches, pulls the lever. He's like, I think I got it figured out. Thanks. And that is kind of just how he does things.
Uh-huh.
And he never really loses that throughout the series. He never gets to the point where he's like, okay, that's when I was younger and new, and I figured it out now. It's still just like, no, I just have a job to do, and I've just got to get it done.
Well, and I
And
love
whatever the consequences are, doesn't matter. Just got to get the job done.
and the through line for me with Daniel Craig as Bond is you really feel everything this Bond goes through, whether it's an emotional hit or a physical hit. Like he sells it and you believe it. And it's like
Mhm.
every time he falls, every time he gets punched, every time he gets shot, and you're like, "Ooh," like you like grimace with it because you're like, "Oh, dang," because he's just so good at selling that. But I really like the fact that it happens with the emotional hits too. And a lot of it's in his eyes. Like he's not giving a physical reaction to being upset, but you can see it in his eyes. And I love
Yeah.
that. I think that's so cool.
Yeah, he's
Yep.
got that face that I love that I don't think you get with the other Bonds. That there's a story behind those eyes. There's a story behind that face. And that's what I like. Like I'm a person that likes old Brad Pitt and not young babyface Brad Pitt because that face,
There's some mileage
there's a
to that.
story.
Yeah.
There's something behind there, and
Yeah.
and I really like that about him. And I know this is a conflict with a lot of fans, and we probably won't agree with it. But I think that Remy Malek was a good villain here because you're hitting emotions with emotions, and for his last story, this Bond in this 5-movie run, everything bad that he has had to fight has because of something he has done.
Yeah.
He is paying for his, like in other Bond movies, they're just bad guys and you're going
Right.
after them. But most
Right.
of the bad guys in these movies are tied to something that he did. He can't run from his past. There is no time. There is no time long enough that you can get away from your past. And I love how they do that because Remy Malek's character, that villain, is tied to something he did. And now he's got to pay the consequences of the job that he chose to do. Um, you know,
I liked Remy Malek's villain a lot. I wish we had more time with him.
Absolutely. Yep.
I feel like they finally, I mean, Blofeld had potential,
Uh-huh.
and the actor's incredibly talented,
Right.
but we just never got there with him. And Malek, I feel like he comes in and he just eats up the scenery as he goes. Like he
In the
just
right way.
steals every scene that and it's
Yeah.
just amazing. And he's got the arrogance and the piousness that this kind of villain needs to have.
Well, yeah, he
And
sees
then
himself as the opposite of, or he sees himself the same as Bond. He's like,
right,
we're mirror images of each
and
other.
they kind of are.
right, right, right down to loving the same woman.
Yeah.
And if you want like what a really unhealthy obsession with another individual would be like, he is a great example of that. I mean, just awful. And he's just like everything he does, you're like just this potential that it could be something awful for someone else. And the way that his story ends is just sudden and just over. I mean,
And
just
I
I
want
like
to
that
say,
too.
like, looking at his character in this movie, and then I'm sorry, I'm going to go back to Quantum Mania and Jonathan
I'm
Majors.
sorry you're going to go back to it
I
as
feel
well.
like their characters are very similar in that there's this
Uh,
past that we're trying to figure out, in that they're trying to keep everything calm, and they're in there and they're maniacal, and there are things that are causing them to do these bad things. But the writing for Remy Malek, and the way that he portrays his quiet demons,
Mm,
was way better than we got with Kang. And I know there's more coming, but
Right.
I shouldn't have to, like in this movie, yeah,
Wait.
we wanted more of him. But it's because it was so good. In the other movie, we wanted more of Kang because we weren't there, because we
Yeah.
didn't understand.
Yeah.
And really their process was very similar too. I mean,
Mhm.
right down to taking the main character's daughter hostage, and
Yep.
Mhm.
Kang does it in Quantumania. And I mean, really, I don't know that we need. I'm not saying anybody should take a lot of time to sit down and compare these two movies side by side, but
But
we've
You
seen
want
both of
a 30-page essay, double space.
but this is
like,
how easy it is, and
yeah,
you know what I like how it was
I
done
think
right.
Right.
I think for me, what makes it work more, number one, Remy Malik is he just does a great job with this character, and I think it just ties in better with the story. But the daughter, Mathilda, is much younger and helpless. Cassie's
Mhm.
got a super suit, and she can
Yes.
shrink, and she can jump punch, and all this other stuff. Like, the level of, I'm telling you, if you want to make a movie really intense for Jake, you want to crank that intensity up for me to the point where I'm just like, I've got to see how the movie ends to make sure everybody's okay.
Mhm.
Take a kid, put the kid in danger. Like, and then that's it. I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't like that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Um, and the minute he does, he separates her from her mom,
Uh-huh.
I wanted him to get a bullet in the head at that point.
But there was points in the movie where I understood what he was doing.
Uh-huh. Oh,
You
for
know
sure.
what I mean? Just like when you go back to Javier Bardem and he
Mhm.
takes out his mouthpiece and his face goes in and he
Mhm.
explains, so you gave me this pill and I took it and it
Yes, that's what
ruined
happened.
this is what happens, and it's kind of that, going back to the Avengers, or Superman, Batman versus Superman, is that like what happens after everything
Mhm.
is done. Nobody goes back to, okay, what after all the destruction? What happens if that cyanide pill doesn't
Mhm.
work, and now you've got an agent that you just left behind, and I understand that's the job that you decided to take, but
Mhm.
But
what happens when
that fallout.
that person goes and kills the wrong people or the family of someone, and now you've got the straggler out there, this kid
Yeah.
that's going to come back, and that's always how it happens. You leave
Mhm.
that kid and that kid's going to come back and kill you. It happens in every movie that you leave a kid usually. um and but I do think that Remy Malik sold it. But what audience and critics didn't love about it, because I finally read some stuff like maybe 6 months after the movie came back, because I just try
Mhm.
not to go there. I try and be fine with my thoughts of the movie. But they didn't love that it wasn't this big ostentatious
Mm.
villain. They wanted the maniacal laugh. They
Yeah.
wanted this Christoph Waltz, you know,
And you kind of get that with the mask. Like, it kind of sets that
yeah.
expectation
But
almost.
he's like this small guy. But let's look back in history. Let's look back at Napoleon. Let's look back at, like, Hitler wasn't a tall guy. He
Well,
was kind of a small guy. Like, I don't want to, but what I'm saying is, for me, villains, having those quiet villains that you would look at and not think they're the villain, is scarier to me
Yeah.
than the guy you think is the villain and ends up being a big teddy bear, or just the person in front of the villain, right? The cloak and dagger guy.
So who's
yeah.
your favorite villain out of the series?
It's hard because there are so many parts where Javier Bardem just nails it.
Mhm.
But for me, I would have to say No Time to Die is my favorite movie, because I think that it all plays just like a symphony together with how they connect all of these dots. It's kind of like how Endgame comes in and connects all the dots,
Yeah.
and everything makes sense and it just moves together, and then it ends and you're heartbroken, but you're satisfied.
Well, and we were talking about last week about how they set up all these kind of like loose ends. There's all these little pieces
Mhm.
that it's like they introduced,
Mhm.
and now they've got to go in
Yeah.
and tie those together. So yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's, like, and maybe that's why I like it so much and why I like, Tony Stark, Iron Man, is that he causes his own problems. And usually the demons that he has to fight against are the demons he creates himself. And when he finally goes head to head, he loses. But the people that he loves the most wins. Maybe I'm just a sucker for that story. And that's why I like this story so much, because it's the same. So,
Jake, do you have a personal villain?
I don't know. This one was good, and I think Rami Malek does a great job. But I think Skyfall was better for me, and I think that the villain in Skyfall was probably my favorite in the series.
Yeah,
just because he to me, he was the most head to head with James Bond, and I loved the look. You're looking in a mirror, and this is who you could become if you start going, if the circumstances put you on this path, this is who you would be. And I just feel like they really mirror each other really well. So I really liked his villain a lot in Skyfall.
Yeah, I'd go with him and Le Chiffre. That whole scene with the chair is just,
yeah.
I'd say Remy's probably in the middle here, and then unfortunately Christoph to me is the least effective villain. Great actor, great potential, but that character just didn't work for me.
Least effective, because we've left out Quantum of Solace, and that had to be the worst villain in the series.
Yeah, that's probably true.
I think. I don't know. I'm not trying to tell you what to think, Tracy. I'm not.
You're right. No, you're right, Dad. Yeah.
I did like the opening of this, and I did like that they picked Billie Eilish and her brother to do this. I think that song really fit, and they did a good job at grabbing another audience, because I mean, my daughter, huge Billie Eilish fan. When we went to her concert, me and Dave and Sammy last year, the year before, I don't know, time when she was in Salt Lake City, she sang it, and she had this awesome stage, and it just, even hearing it live, like you felt what that song was for this movie. And so I thought that song was a good fit for sure.
Yeah, I liked the opening song.
Yeah, this is better than the last couple.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that as well.
Still think we should have got a Foo song for the opener.
I'll be all right with that. I still think the Foo should play the Super Bowl someday, but
you think they should do what?
The
Super Bowl. We should have a big rock and Foo Super Bowl.
The Foo Super Bowl would be great. Pink would be great. Pink needs to get one of those.
I don't think she'll do it because, a lot of people will not do the Super Bowl because you do have to lip sync.
Yep.
Like, you can record it on the field and then replay it, but they want you to record it. So thanks, Justin Timberlake.
Man, I didn't forget about it, but anyway. Somebody commented on Rihanna lip syncing at the Super Bowl, and that it was awful that she was lip syncing. And I think it was like, maybe even been like Howard Stern commenting on it or something.
A lot of people commented. My comment back is
do that every Super Bowl.
And the only people that are good at lip syncing are the people that do it more. And she doesn't. So that's what my comment was to everyone that commented on my post about how much I loved it. But the thing is I know who Rihanna is. She stayed true to herself. Yeah. She was also pregnant, so she had a huge dancer. I loved her Super Mario Brothers stage setup. Like, but for me, if you wanted more, maybe Rihanna's just not for you, and that's okay. We can't make everybody happy. Right. But the only people that are good at lip syncing is the people that do it often. And she doesn't.
Yeah.
So
sorry, derailed this a little bit there. Yeah. I just the Super Bowl blanket was kind of throwing me there, Jake.
I know. This is a lucky blanket. Every game I'm watching with this blanket now. Next year, I think the Super Bowl is in Vegas, so I'm hoping that means Donny Osmond is going to do the halftime show since he's got a residency there in Vegas.
Should they just pull everyone that has a residency and everybody gets to do a song?
Yeah.
So we'll get a little
mega halftime show. It'll be great. A little bit from everybody.
Yeah. Val's not sold. We're gonna have to sell it.
I feel like I said something that was confusing, Val. I'm sorry.
No, you know what we need to have though? They need to open it with the flying Elvises coming in, like dropping in.
Oh yes.
If they don't have the flying Elvises drop in, I'm gonna be mad.
The Dome Stadium, but still we could get shots.
But I think it's a transparent dome, so we would see them coming down and then like hitting, and then that like as they're sliding down.
That'd be a great James Bond moment. Bond
before
jumping
we get
out
to
from
the grades,
flying Elvises.
It would be
Utah chapter.
Before we get to the grades for this movie, we do want to remind you to please go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you have not yet done so, and then like this video and comment below with who your favorite Bond villain is, whether from these 5 films or any Bond film. We'd love to hear who it is.
And if you entered to win our Creed tickets, we're excited to see you tomorrow night. We will be hosting Creed 3 at the Megaplex. And then stay tuned to our Facebook and Instagram and Patreon because we will have more movie passes to give away. We have a lot of movies coming up. And so we're excited about that.
Yeah, we got Shazam, Guardians 3's coming. There's a lot.
Yep.
John Wick 72.
I'm hoping we'll have tickets to give away for Shazam so that everyone can experience a Shazam movie with Tracy laughing. And you, dear listener or viewer, could decide if it is funny or not when Tracy laughs. I personally feel like it was appropriate time to laugh. I don't know what the kid's problem was.
I don't know what that kid's problem was. It was a perfectly funny moment. Zachary
He probably sends his food back at restaurants.
I think so. He's excuse me, this Happy Meal is not up to my personal palate taste.
These chicken nuggets are old and stale. All right. I'm gonna give this one a B. I don't remember where I landed on all of the other ones, but this one was good. I loved Rami Malek. There were some parts in the middle that were a little bit slow for me. But overall it was still a fun movie. I guess not so fun. I mean, he dies in the end, but other than that, it was fun.
It was satisfying.
Yeah, it was satisfying. That's right.
Yeah, I'll go B+ on this one. I liked it a lot. I still think Spectre is the best of the series.
Skyfall is the one you
think
is the
excuse
best
me, not Spectre.
I was like, wait, what?
Sorry, I got up at 3 a.m. this morning, so
I was almost gonna throw this octopus at your face.
Cocaine octopus. That's octopus right there.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna say it. This is an A for me. I think you guys all know I brought it up every single freaking episode. For me, the music is great, the editing is great, the cinematography is great, the way that they pull everything together. At the end, the way that he has to fight his past and he loses is real life. But he keeps his child and his love of his life alive. People celebrate him and he gets that freaking awesome shot on the top of the building. It's beautiful. So it's an A for me.
Yeah, those missiles exploding and yeah.
All right. Good. With that, we bring 00 February to an end, to a close. We thank you so much for your support. Please come back next month. In March, we will begin by talking about Creed. Any rumors that you've heard that we are doing March Night Shyamalan, it's not true.
Whoever started that rumor.
Even if we started those rumors, I can tell you they are not true. But please come back. We're going to have Creed, and there are a lot of movies coming out. Make sure you join our Patreon so that you don't miss any of the exclusive episodes that are covering the newer movies that are coming out in theaters right now. And until next time, we won't see you at the movies unless we do Tuesday night.
And then say hi.
That's right. Oh boy.
This This has been an Age of Geek media production.